And welcome into the Monday edition of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley here with you. Joe Rexrode, he'll be along shortly, taking care of some business at the Titans facility. And then he'll be right here with us. So looking forward to that. Matter of fact, Joe Rexrode has just walked through the door.
Look at me pulling a Willie Donick.
What a stud he is this early in the morning. Just rolling through after taking care of business earlier this morning at the Titans facility.
Man, I thought I was pulling a Willie Donick, but I am a few seconds late.
It's all right.
Willie Donick is the master of showing up, sitting down, boom, show starts.
That's right.
I got swabbed early today.
Yeah, you did. That's some dedication on your part. So those are the requirements nowadays to cover the Tennessee Titans, and here you are again, fulfilling those requirements before 6 a.m. Way to go, buddy.
Well, I went over there. I was like, you know what? I'll just try because we were told you could start at 6. Yeah. So I got over there like 5:40, and, there was a guy out there. There were players coming through, but I drove the wrong way. So so there was like a player got swabbed, and I kind of had to sneak past his truck.
Yeah.
Another player, and then they came out and got me. So I think they were a little mad at me for going the wrong way, but yeah, it was 5:40 in the morning.
What do you want to do? Yeah. The sun's not up yet.
Yeah, so all swabbed.
There we go. Joe Rexrode taking care of business this early in the morning. What a weekend it was here in Nashville. We'll have a lot to get into with the Titans coming up, including something that set me off this weekend. I'll have that more for you on that one here in about 15 minutes or
Something
so.
to set you off?
Yeah.
So it's a Rob rant.
It's a Rob rant coming up at 6:15. Have the Rex rant at 7:45. The Rob rant coming up at 6:15. Looking forward to that. Lots of fast cars going around downtown Nashville this weekend. The Big Machine Music City Grand Prix looked like it was a huge success. First off, it looked great on TV. Just the aerial shots they were able to put together, going around the city. It was still, it's amazing to think about going about 180 miles an hour down the Korean Veterans Bridge.
Just once.
I've seen some people, I would love to do it just one time. I've seen some people who, at times I've thought, have gone about 180 miles an hour down Korean Veterans Bridge, but what a scene it was. I knew a lot of people that were down there for it. Everything that I've heard about it, it went off very smoothly down there. And look, I thought it looked great. And the road course itself, I know that there was a lot of chatter about, how bumpy it was and, the kind of the challenges as a driver of trying to navigate through that. I thought it looked great. I thought it was really cool. And one of my buddies texted me. He's like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever been to in my life." And I was like, "Hey, man, good. That's good stuff." I thought it looked great on TV.
Yeah, Chase had some videos, like he was tweeting out some, some of the spots and some of this, like the trucks. He had this. Did you see the tweet he had?
Oh yeah,
with
the
airborne
the air.
trucks. Like, jeez, yeah. No, it looked like huge success. Not surprised that the city, any kind of event, we know this that comes through here, they handle it as well as any city, can handle something. So, hopefully it becomes an annual thing, a tradition. I haven't seen anything to suggest that it wasn't a big success.
No, I haven't either. So, a really cool event over the weekend, and I know a lot of people tune into a special edition of Chasing Checkers as well. We'll have Chase McCabe coming up a little bit later in the show at 9:30 to kind of recap the weekend that was here for the Music City Grand Prix. Chase McCabe, Mr. Racing, here in this area. So, looking forward to getting his thoughts coming up at 9:30 about just a really cool weekend, a really cool scene in Nashville, Tennessee with the Music City Grand Prix. We'll take your thoughts, share your experiences all show long on our text line as well, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode, I know one thing you were excited about was Friday night, the gold medal game in men's basketball between the United States and France. Kevin Durant and company, they get it done. USA wins gold. So after all the turmoil, after all the struggles that the team went through, especially in Las Vegas as they were kind of leading into the Olympics, they get it done. They end up winning gold, and winning gold for, I guess this would be the fourth consecutive Olympics now that they've won gold, ever since 2004 in Athens.
That's right. Yes. Yep. Yeah, so a lot of freezing cold takes, retweets.
Draymond's having some fun with it.
Draymond went on a little rant. Speaking of Draymond, and yeah, granted, there's some bias here, okay? someone I covered since he was in high school. But, man, the winning plays he made late in that game, and even, I forgot about the whole goaltending thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing? Like, oh, no, you can do that in international basketball. I mean, because it was going to go in.
Oh, yeah.
The guy is so Marcus Thompson, who works for us, at the Athletic, he covers San Fran, but he writes a lot about the Warriors. He's written Steph Curry's book. He had a column about Draymond in the Basketball Hall of Fame, and honestly, I think it's going to be a gimme. And I know there's going to be people that are going to say, wait a minute, a dude who scored 9-10 points a game and all that, and I get that, but you look at all he's done and what he does on the basketball court that is not statistical is pretty remarkable. I mean, he's one of the best defensive players I've ever seen. And again, I didn't think in college that he was going to be that in the NBA at all. So he was big time, but KD was the guy. I mean, my gosh.
Well, no, I said he'd have 34.
That's right.
Only had 29.
That's right. You
close,
were right there. Yeah. Well,
I knew he'd have a big game, but only 29 for KD.
Yeah, you were in the ballpark. I mean, he's just ridiculous, and every time, every 4 years, he's the guy who elevates.
Well, now he and Carmelo Anthony, the only 3-time gold medal winners in USA basketball history. So pretty good stuff from Kevin Durant the other night. And after they won gold, as they typically do, Kevin Durant and Draymond Green, they kept some receipts. And they have that. Did you see the Instagram Live they put out there?
I did not.
It was quite something. Kevin Durant, Draymond Green just yelling. I think Colin Cowherd's name got brought up. They started yelling at Kendrick Perkins. It was amazing.
Nice. I love it.
It was awesome. Of course, who doesn't want to yell at Kendrick Perkins nowadays?
And then did I see Draymond had a FaceTime with Tom Brady? Did I see that right?
Yeah. Brady's everywhere, man. He's at Peyton Manning's Hall of Fame ceremony, FaceTiming Draymond.
That was interesting. Peyton had a great – you see the line about Brady.
Oh, yeah.
By the time he's eligible in 35, he'll only have time to put it on
Instagram.
Yes. But, yeah, I want to know more about the Tom Brady-Draymond FaceTime.
I do too.
The Michigan State connection there.
I haven't wanted to know this much about a Tom Brady FaceTime since he FaceTimed Vrabel last year.
That's right. Was that Edelman?
Yeah.
Him and Edelman? Yeah.
Vrabel and Edelman. It was good stuff. By the way, we've now fallen even further behind in the NFC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila.
Yeah, someone had Sapong.
Yes, the listener had Sapong the other day.
Oh, wow. Good job, listener.
The listener's now up to 4 correct answers in this competition. You remain at 1. Michelle remains at 1. Robbie Stanley, Ryan Porth remain at 0.
That's pretty amazing.
I mean, that's got to be an insurmountable lead at this point.
Oh, I would think so. I mean, there's a lot more matches.
There is
to come, but man, that's impressive. Not impressive performance though overall. No. First loss in a long time,
and a disappointing loss at that. Miami, a team that absolutely Nashville SC should have beaten, and they've probably gotten some results this year where they've been able to find a way to get points that they probably didn't deserve. Now, granted, I think especially early in the season, they had a couple of results where they ended up in draws where they absolutely should have won. So things have a way of evening out over the course of a long season, especially a season like the MLS. But I would say that yesterday probably their worst performance of the season to this point.
Yeah. I mean, they've been very consistent for the most part. So, I think you can allow for a stinker here and there. Coming back home now, they've kind of gone away for a bit, and obviously they play better here for sure.
And then a big weekend for Darius Leonard as well. The Indianapolis Colts and Darius Leonard reaching a contract extension worth, I believe, around $99 million. So a good time to be Darius Leonard with the Indianapolis Colts, the highest paid linebacker in the league.
Highest paid inside linebacker, and that is a position where you don't – I'd say after running back, I'd say inside linebacker might be the least valued position.
Yeah.
Like of the the scrimmage positions, non-special teams. That's a lot of money for an inside linebacker, but the guy does a lot of good stuff. I mean, he's great.
He's a pretty good player.
Yeah.
I think he's one of those guys that they come along every now and then that's probably just worth spending the extra money on. Rather than trying to nickel and dime your way at the linebacker position, every now and then you get a talent that comes along and you're like, you know what? I think I'll pay that money.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, I can't blame him based on the difference he's made for them and how different they are when he's on or off the field. And of course, sorry to bring this up, but he was there for the Titans.
He was
when they took Rashaan Evans. But, a lot of other people missed on him too. Second rounder. Chris Ballard loves that second round.
He loves the second round. There's no question about that. Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Got a texture that says, if the University of Kentucky was a country, they would be tied with France for 10th all-time in Olympic medals.
I love that texter.
Was this Michelle's burner account on the text line?
Okay, wait. All time?
All time. I look. This has not been verified. I need to do some research. I'm not saying they're wrong. They could be right.
Okay,
I don't know.
In Olympic medals.
Yes. If the University of Kentucky was a country, they would be tied with France for 10th all time in Olympic medals.
Why?
This is coming from our text line.
Well, BBN, Michelle. Why is that?
Because we are elite, Joe Rexrode.
But in what? Like what sports?
Oh, okay. So basketball.
Well, sure. There's basketball.
Obviously, Sydney McLaughlin. She's an amazing track runner.
There you go.
She won. Rifle. We're really good at rifle.
Okay.
Couple people
there
in
you
there.
go. See, I did not know that. Do we have any dressage at the University of Kentucky?
No, Great Britain sweeps that sport, Joe.
Yeah, they dominate.
I bet
don't
they do.
They are amazing.
A lot
at
of
that.
We're really big for track. I think there's.
Is that right? Okay,
There's multiple.
that's interesting. I mean, because I think track. Actually, Tennessee's had some great runners. Georgia, Georgia has great swimmers. I did not
Also,
realize
swimming
that.
and track, you can compete in so many different events too.
Sure.
And so many people cross over. So I think that obviously definitely helps.
I just wonder if there's like one dominant Olympian from Kentucky that I didn't realize was from Kentucky. You know what I mean? Like honestly,
Christian Laettner?
Like off the. Well, he definitely did not go to Kentucky. He stomped on a Kentucky basketball player.
She only went for 1 year though and went pro.
Carl Lewis
so.
went to University of Houston.
See,
you go.
so the Cougars have got to be up there too. But that's a heck of a fact. I want it verified though. No. Who is it? Who's on the text line with this?
No name.
Okay.
That's why I think it's
I mean,
Michelle's
that's
burner
a
account.
great stat, an incredible stat.
Yeah.
University of
If
Kentucky
true.
put it out too. Their PR.
Did they?
So.
Okay.
You
Well,
know
then they've got the receipts. I would think so. Wow.
All right.
BBN.
Represent.
Let's go.
Unfortunately, I am not an Olympian, but.
Well, you
just
still could be.
there's some
You're
time.
young.
Yeah, there's eligibility. You got some time.
I'll work on my table tennis skills.
Got a lot of work to do based on the table tennis
boy.
I saw being played. It was unbelievable.
That's some of the most ridiculous stuff you can see.
So lots of Olympics coming up in the next 3 years.
And we got Teresa Walker flying home, so she'll get like a day off and be back out at Titans camp this week. So
Then Vrabel will be back in. Vrabel will be back in a safe place.
Vrabel will be in
Teresa
a way better mood. He will be in a way better mood now.
That's for sure. One thing that did not put me in a great mood this weekend was the reaction I saw from some Titans fans to some news coming out on Saturday. We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Hope everybody's doing well here on this Monday morning in Nashville, Tennessee.
I'm trying to get into the Zoom right now because I do not want to deprive people of a close-up of my face. Whoa, Zoom is updating.
That's right. It updated for me, too. It only takes like about 15, 20
This
seconds.
is the first time I've ever seen this. So we got a brand new Zoom now?
Yeah, maybe higher quality.
Does it look different?
I don't think so.
Still the same,
Doesn't look a whole lot
same old
different.
Zoom.
But as soon as we can get
Does my
Rexrode's
face look different?
pretty
Let's
face
hope.
on there.
Let's hope.
Your face looks great today, buddy.
No. Got a little sunburn, Got some hoops in this week, and we missed you.
I know. I'm sorry.
But I would tell you that Elijah Campbell took me to the hole a few times. So,
Elijah seems like he'd be a pretty good ball player.
he's the thing that annoys me about him is that he actually already kind of has some old man game to him, and he's not an old man. Like he knows how to throw his weight around, which is something that I had to learn once I got, heavier. But yeah, he's got some crafty post moves. Kind of pissed me off. But that I didn't get the ball enough to score on him. So
you just got to demand the ball a little bit more. Who was facilitating?
well, it was various people. But Mitch Light, my editor, and his son and my son Brennan and I, we won a real impressive 4-on-4 game. So
There you go.
I mean, I've got the full recap. We're probably going to spend about an hour later in the show, right? Breaking
Coming
it
up
all
at
down.
theathletic.com as well.
But I'll tell you what, Ben Arthur from the Tennessean, big asset. Like, we're trying to put together, enough media people who can actually play the game to get some good games together.
And not, pass out. Yeah.
Ben Arthur is a big add to the media.
It's good to know.
Yeah, he's nice, physical, finishes at the rim.
We need to put together a media basketball league. Or at least a team.
Well, we're trying
compete.
to get, a regular game going.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been trying for years. We're getting closer.
It's a slow
But
progress.
You got to get there, man.
I know. I do have to get there
We
at
need
some
you.
point. I can shoot some threes in the corner.
That's fine. Just spot up.
Yeah. That's what I'll do.
Defense, rebound, move the ball.
Let's see what I can do on that front. Joe, Titans back in action over the weekend at training camp. They'll be back on the field today with the officials in attendance as well, which we'll get to a little bit more coming up later in the show. But there was something that happened over the weekend that just left me, again, a little speechless. And it had to do with Rashad Weaver. And we're going to play a little sound from Vrabel on Rashad Weaver. We've talked a lot about Weaver here on the show and the allegations that he is facing that we found out, I think, literally the day after he was drafted. When you go back to the draft back in April with the Titans, about the incident in Pittsburgh. And obviously, we've not talked to Rashad Weaver. The media has not talked to Rashad Weaver since then. And Saturday was the first opportunity that the media has had to discuss things with him. And obviously, Vrabel was asked about that as well. And here's what Titans head coach Mike Vrabel had to say on the impending court case coming up for Rashad Weaver, which I believe is scheduled sometime in October at this
5th.
point. October 5th at this point. Here's what Titans head coach Mike Vrabel had to say on Saturday.
Weaver's court case is a while off. Imagine that's something that hangs over a guy, and there's nothing he can do between now and then. And advise them or talk to him about something like that?
I think that's something that you could discuss with Weave when the opportunity presents itself. He has been he's been focused. He's improved. He has showed improvement. And as far as guys' personal situations, I have conversations with a lot of our players and most of our players, and trying to remain focused here and understand that we all have a job to do, but somewhat and very empathetic of things that they have going on outside of here as it relates to personal situations or family, all those things that we've always discussed. So try to get them to focus on, to the best of their ability, work and our football team while they're here.
So that was Mike Vrabel on Saturday being asked about Rashad Weaver. And then Weaver was interviewed by the media. And Paul Kaharski, who joined us on the show last week, asked Rashad Weaver about the impending charges, the court case that he's got coming up against him, and also the comments that Weaver allegedly made that were cited at the incident, saying, quote, he had no problem hitting a female if they needed it. And Rashad Weaver, I mean, he basically answered the question by saying, I want to talk about my time with the Titans. We're here to talk about football, and did not really address those things, which Rashad Weaver can answer the question however he wants to answer the question. That's not where I take issue as much. The reaction on social media to Kuharsky asking that question was pretty unbelievable to watch from some Titans fans. I mean, it was like, how dare you ask a question like that? Whose side are you on? And those comments just got me fired up on Saturday because there seems to be this fundamental lack of understanding. The media is not supposed to be this pom-pom waving cheerleader section for the Tennessee Titans or the Nashville Predators or whoever else you want to cover. There's a fundamental lack of understanding that objectivity is a good thing, and it is not the media's job to coddle Rashad Weaver throughout this process when it comes to answering questions like that. Again, Weaver is entitled to answer questions or not answer questions any way he wants to. That's no different from any other athlete out there. But the reaction to Kuharsky asking that question on Saturday really got me pissed off, quite frankly, and fired up about fans out there that if you're such a homer that you cannot realize that that's a question that needs to be asked, I really don't have much time for you. I really can't help you all that much. I realize that Rashad Weaver is probably not going to answer anything about that question and has probably been advised by his legal team not to even address it, and that's all fine. But that is the number one story right now with Rashad Weaver. It's a question that absolutely is fair to ask. It's a question that, quite frankly, if it wasn't asked, the media is not doing their job.
Exactly.
And it makes no sense to me how, if you're a Titans fan, you cannot understand that that's a legitimate question. And quite frankly, if you had a problem with it, that tells me you're probably more concerned about how it could negatively affect your football team rather than the story at hand. And that's a whole different set of issues that we got.
Yep. I mean, look, it's played out. I've seen it a million times and gone through it, and social media, brings it to a different level because you have that immediate interaction and immediate, whining about it, and it's the same thing. It's very much, why would you ask that question? Yeah, whose side are you on? It's hilarious. Like, really? I mean, you really, first of all, I don't think you should want, people who are rooting on the home team, covering your team. That's just me. Some people do. There's different, there's a lot of different things out there available to people. But I mean, if you follow this stuff as a fan, you got to understand that of course it's going to be asked. It has to be asked. It would have been completely, and good job by Kuharsky asking the question. If he didn't ask it, someone would have asked it. It has to be asked. The Titans brought him out on a Saturday for a reason because they knew that the press corps was going to be lighter.
Yep.
And it was on the PR side of things, you're looking at this in terms of how can you minimize this. On the media side of things, of course you have to ask a question. I'm not surprised that Weaver answered it the way he did, although I would say, some sort of, I guess if I was advising him, I'd say maybe some sort of regret that there's a situation doesn't mean that you're admitting anything.
Right.
You could maybe do a little more than I'm just answering football questions. But regardless, that's not – you're right. That wasn't out of the ordinary. But I'm with you. I guess I'm just like I just expect it.
Nah.
I expect it every time that there's going to be someone who's like, how dare you? Or like the whole thing of like, what do you think he's going to say? Oh, I don't know. But that's why you don't ask a question? I mean, you anticipate something, so you just don't ask it?
Well, and there were people that were upset about the timing of the question being asked. And my response was, okay, well, when is the right time to ask this question?
Timing in what way?
Timing in terms of well, he's not going to say anything, so why would you ask it now? And they're like, just ask it when the process is played out. Well, let me tell you this. When the process is played out, he's not going to talk about it one way or the other. So it doesn't change in terms of his ability to talk about it. He's probably not ever going to talk about it. Right. At least to that degree.
The timing of this is when he was made available.
Correct.
That's when you have a chance to ask him.
Correct.
We don't have a direct. Maybe someone will get a direct line to Rashad Weaver and just get a constant, a play-by-play from him. But to your point, now he's one thing he said the other day is everything will come to light. Well, what's going to happen? Probably what usually happens is there'll be a plea deal and nothing will come to light. And we will have this report out there that'll always be there on Rashad Weaver's name. A police officer said this. That he said that. That'll always be there. I mean, what's going to come to light that's going to change that? That, to me, is always going to be a part of his story, like it or not.
Well, exactly.
That's what happens when you're a public figure.
And if you're asking him, so let's say that a plea deal is reached or an agreement is reached, and it's over with and done with. You ask Rashad Weaver about it after the fact. You think Rashad Weaver's going to be like, yeah, let's talk about it now.
Right. Now let me tell you exactly what happened play by play. No, exactly. It won't be talked. I mean, look, at some point this will be probably resolved. I have no idea what's going to happen, but a lot of times with these things, I would say 90% of these things turn into a plea bargain. And I would, looking at these charges in this situation, it probably won't involve jail time. It probably will involve probation. It probably won't affect him on the field in terms of his availability. And then he'll be available the next time after that and get asked again, and he'll say nothing, and that's how it'll go.
Yeah.
So live with it. I mean, you in our job to not ask that question, it would be. I mean, it's fireable. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, and it was once again kind of a reminder, I guess, of some sort of either lack of understanding of how the job works, or you just want to be that much of a Titans homer. I mean, it's probably a combination of the two, and that's fine. Like, you're entitled to feel that way if you're a fan. But if you can't understand why that question was asked, I really don't have a lot of time for you. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, it's a question that absolutely had to be asked. And look, Rashad Weaver, I don't know what kind of a player he's going to be. I don't know how this situation is going to affect him on the field, if at all. I don't know what's going to happen on that front. But it was just one of those things watching the reaction on Saturday, and I was just like, to your point, I know you've been through it probably a lot more than I have, but it's just, man, the lack of understanding of what questions are supposed to be asked and what are not was amazing to me.
I mean, the Austin Watson thing comes to mind for me.
Yes.
A lot of people were mad at me after the press conference with Poyle and Sean Henry. You know, Twitter. I'm sure I could go back and find those mentions. I mean, whatever. I mean, it's now you got me mad. Can I just replay this segment for the Rex rant? I don't have a more angry Rex rant than this. Nice job.
That's what I'm here for. Just get people fired up.
Got the juices flowing on a Monday morning.
That's right. Rex Rant coming up at 7:45 this morning, and every Monday morning at 7:45 as well. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation on the Titans, taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode out at Titans camp once again on Saturday. We'll get his thoughts on a light practice last Saturday at training camp as well. All that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. ESPN 94.9 is the official English radio home of the Nashville Soccer Club. Listen in on Sunday as Nashville SC takes on DC United at Nissan Stadium. Pregame starts at 5:45, and the match begins at 6 p.m. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic, intern Will, here with you as well on this Monday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Joe Rexrode, you were out at Titans camp on Saturday. Kind of a lighter day on the attendance side of camp on Saturday. What were some of your takeaways from Titans camp over the weekend?
It was kind of a light day. A lot of guys had the day off. So you had, again, the offense kind of operating. No, A.J. Brown sat out. We know Julio Jones hasn't been around. So, I think obviously he hasn't been around since he sort of hobbled around a little bit after the one play in the end zone last week. But, again, that's not like a big deal, but he hasn't been out there. Jeffrey Simmons got the day off. So there's some guys that are clearly just like, you know what, key player, day off.
Yeah.
Simmons is one of them. Brown's one of them. One key takeaway from the day you can't ignore is that Daniel Munyer, I think, had 4 bad snaps. I mean, he had a shotgun snap that basically went sideways. And it's one of those things, I mean, it's camp, it's practice, other stuff, but you're already, like, kind of irritable out there, probably, if you're a player, like, it's really hot, and that starts to, like, tick people off. You can see that, So, I mean, the interior of the offensive line is definitely an area you look because Aaron Brewer right now is still not healthy enough to participate, and they're kind of thin, looking for help. Ben Jones also out. He sort of had a little bang up under a pile. Then he came back, but then he hasn't been back since then. So,
yeah.
And that's a guy who, as we know, through the course of a season, has often been like a banged up and then find a way to rally and play Sunday guy. So they've sort of been thin
Shoeless
inside.
Ben Jones out there, just walking around on the field of Lambeau Field with no shoes on.
Yeah.
Before the game.
Yeah, that one year at Kansas City, he and Conklin did that, and I was like, you're both going to get frostbite, but hey, have a good game.
Mine's got to be in a different place to do that.
Worked out for him. They won that day.
They did.
Because Ryan Suckup kicked a big block of ice somehow to win that game. I don't know how the heck he did that. But that stood out. The kickers were really good, and they've been quite good since Sam Ficken arrived. Now, McCann was having a great day. I think he made everything, and then they had a 2-minute period and got him to like a, I think, 53-yarder, which he missed. So kind of under the game pressure, rush on the field, like a real situation. He didn't hit the 53-yard, but he has stepped up. And he stepped up, since Ficken arrived, and Ficken is pretty good. So, I mean, it's not like the way it was early in camp where it's McCann and Hallbell, and it's just like, what's the point almost? Just go get another kicker. So McCann is stepping up. Ficken has looked pretty good. Friday will be obviously big. Actually, I think it was David Beauclair asked Vrabel, you try to get yourself into some field goal situations in this game just to get those guys.
Well, and I thought Vrabel's answer was kind of interesting. He was like, "Yeah, we like to see them kick as much as possible." It was basically what he said. I mean, he didn't go out and say that they're going to start kicking field goals on 3rd down or anything. But
he also made the point that an extra point now is actually a mid-range field goal. A low mid-range field goal. So at least if you get in the end zone, you get those opportunities too. So that'll be big. So it wasn't a hugely, eventful day. Josh Reynolds was out there and looked okay. But again, Marcus Johnson is.
I was going to say that was the main takeaway I had just from following along on Twitter Saturday. There's a lot of buzz about Marcus Johnson right now.
Well, and so Ben Arthur, I was just lauding him for his basketball ability, very increasing the Nashville media's basketball ability. He had a great point. He's like, how many guys every single day of camp have you said, wow, nice, or every single day of camp has who has made a play? I mean, it's a short list, and he's on it. I would also argue a guy like Tier Tart shows up every day. Availability is part of that, of course. But really standing out, Marcus Johnson, he's fast, he runs good routes, he catches everything, he makes plays. And he's taking advantage of a situation with no Julio Jones. Now A.J. Brown's got a little rest. Josh Reynolds has barely been out there. So some of these reps he wouldn't be getting otherwise. But I'm looking at this group, and it is difficult. I mean, it's really difficult because Cam Batson makes plays a lot too, by the way. Cam Batson looks great out there, and yet I'm still kind of counting him out of this team, of this roster. So Marcus Johnson has made it difficult in a good way on this coaching staff. And I just, at this point, I can't imagine that he wouldn't make the team because if they do have an injury at receiver, that's a guy, you watch him play, that's a guy who you could see going in there and actually being, a playmaker for you on a Sunday. Now, some of the other guys who are going to make the roster are probably going to be on it largely because of special teams, but that's going to be an interesting balance. Nick Westbrook-Akina, Racey McMath. I mean, Chester Rogers could be the punt returner.
Yep.
You can't keep 8 receivers. You can't keep 9 receivers. So it's going to be really interesting. I mean, Des Fitzpatrick, that's another takeaway. Vrabel was asked about Fitzpatrick, and he said it's got to be better. And he says this. He said same thing with Rashad Weaver, for example. He said the same thing about Dylan Radins last week. So it's a pretty common theme with rookies. They usually look like rookies at this time of year. Every once in a while you get the A.J. Brown, who it's like, whoa, that dude might be pretty good right away. But Des Fitzpatrick right now, I mean, I'd rank him 9th. Honestly, I could make the case that like Mason Kinsey has played better than him. I could rank him 10th.
Right, but he's also probably going to make the team.
Exactly. Right. Now, it gets a little bit interesting. Do they look at any of these guys and say, is there a way, could we sneak them onto the practice squad? Is it possible to put player X on, put him on waivers, and that no one else is going to take that player to go on their active roster, and then we can put him on the practice squad? I'm sure they'd love to do that with a couple guys.
Yeah. Could be challenging.
But can you make that take that risk with a 4th-round pick? Probably not.
Well, and especially when, these preseason games start to get underway. Like, it's one thing to be lighting up practice the way that they are, but if the receivers continue to go out there and make plays during the preseason, it then becomes all the more difficult to sneak them through on the practice squad because there's actual tape that other teams can see and watch and say, oh, looks like this guy could have something here. I mean, not every team in the league, and this sounds crazy to say if you followed the Titans for any length of time, but not every team in the league is as blessed as the Titans are right now at wide receiver.
That's quite a sentence right there. Yeah, but it's true right now.
It is.
It really is. Yeah, and you're right, and that'll be interesting too. Like, what does the film look like off these preseason games?
Yeah.
For one thing, a lot of these plays being made. I mean, Marcus Johnson has been on the receiving end a lot of Tannehill passes.
Right.
Not strictly. I mean, Logan Woodside, again, has been good in camp. And by the way, there's another thing we can get into. I just early, and Friday will help sort this out. I don't see anything from Matt Barkley that makes me think he's about to come in here and take Logan Woodside's job. He's got time. He just got in. He's just getting the playback, all that stuff. So you got to keep all that in mind, and Friday will help tell the story. But Woodside looking pretty good. But, yeah, these guys, these receivers trying to sort themselves out. They're counting on Woodside and Barkley to also put the ball on the mark and play well.
People have tried to take Logan Woodside's job before. There's just a wake of destruction that he's left behind him.
Yeah, just a trail of bodies.
Wasteland. He's not going to take Logan Woodside's job. We'll continue to discuss the Titans when we come back, including gauging Rexrode's concern level about the availability or lack thereof so far during training camp. All that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Joe Rexrode here. I am Robby Stanley as well. I said Joe Rexrode here like I was you, so I figured I had to clarify.
Oh, I thought you were just saying Joe Rexrode's here.
He is here.
Wow, so you actually called yourself Joe Rexrode. That's
did.
Amazing. Good stuff.
It's a good start to the week. They're on Good Morning Football right now. They're talking about the 5 active players under 30 who could be Hall of Famers and discussing amongst themselves who they would add to the list. I'd love to see the list because Kyle Brandt was talking about Derrick Henry needs to be on that list.
Yeah, so Bucky Brooks came out with a list of 5 under 30 on their way to the Hall of Fame, which I'm sure I can find here real quick because I'm really good with the internet.
Kay Adams adding Christian McCaffrey to the list.
Okay, that's possible. Yeah, I can't find it. Oh, wait, here we go. Lamar Jackson is one of the guys who Bucky Brooks – he
does have an MVP.
I'm going to go ahead and throw a guess out that Pat Mahomes might be on there.
He's probably on that list.
So here's his rankings are 1, Mahomes.
Yeah.
Okay, he's got Jalen Ramsey 3. He's got T.J. Watt 4. He's got Lamar Jackson 5. I want you to guess number 2.
Nick Bosa.
That's actually a good guess. It's Quentin Nelson.
Okay. Yeah.
Very interesting.
That's good.
Not enough love out there for the interior offensive lineman, which, by the way, to the last segment's point, Trey Smith continues to be one of the stories of the camp for the Chiefs. He's going to be a starting guard for them this year.
Yeah.
And I bet you he's freaking good for a lot of years. Boy, the Titans could have had him in the 6th round.
Sometimes the overthinking that takes place in the draft is pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah, and again, a lot of people did it with Trey, and I understand you got those questions, medical stuff. Some teams are a lot more just forget it than other teams are. So fine, so take those teams out of the mix. I think you cost yourself some good players if you have that hard line stance, but some teams do. But yes, 6th round for that guy is stupid.
Yeah. Sometimes the film doesn't lie. The guy can play, that's for sure. Sometimes it's worth taking a risk a little bit earlier, and good for the Chiefs, I guess. Waiting on something good to happen to them.
Yeah, they're finally starting to put some talent together on the offensive side of the ball.
Let's go back to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Jordan texting in, Marcus Johnson made plenty of plays for Indy last year. He has 47 career receptions. Over half were last year alone. Lots of chunk plays.
Yeah.
That's coming from Jordan.
Well, no, and that's what's interesting. It's not like the Colts are loaded at receiver.
Yep.
But whenever a guy like that seems to kind of elevate and then has a season like that, you wonder, why was he not prioritized? I mean, again, Marcus Johnson, if things go well for the Titans this year, he's not going to be on the field much.
Right.
But you need a good 2 at every spot, ideally. And I just think he's a guy who could come in, and maybe more than that. Maybe he's a guy who could be out there in certain situations. But you hope Reynolds stays healthy and is what you signed him to be. And, you hope that those 3 guys pretty much get the reps. What's the likelihood all of them are going to go through the whole season totally healthy? I mean, it's hard to count on that in this league. So Marcus Johnson is a guy who I think you can plug him in and feel like you can still move the ball, make plays, threaten defenses in this league with that guy. It's nice to have at the backup level. So because some of these guys are project young players and kicking game assets, and I think he's a lot more polished than that.
So you've mentioned. Obviously, Saturday, a light day for the Titans at practice. We've talked even heading into training camp. Mike Vrabel's going to be cautious if there's ever really even a threat that a guy is hurt and doesn't need to be out there. He's going to err on the side of caution, especially this time of year. But it was interesting. I mean, he was asked on Saturday about how guys are holding up at this point through training camp, and his quote was, quote, "It could be better." And it talked about how important availability is at this time of year, just to be on the field and improve that way. So if you're a Titans fan and you think about the offensive line situation right now and how thin they are at this moment just because of injury and availability there, We've talked about Julio Jones as well. You factor in the whole team and how at certain spots there's been kind of a lack of availability, a little bit of thin out there right now for the Tennessee Titans. How concerning would that be for you at this time of year, missing out on some of these reps as they head now officially into game week, by the way, coming up against the Falcons later this week?
Yeah, it's interesting because I look at this team right now and I think actually the overall health news has been tremendously positive, right?
Especially when you start looking around the division. Yeah.
Well, that's true too. And just, again, on Saturday, they lined up, and I thought at first we didn't know, or at least I didn't know, that it was just going to be walk-through speed. But they lined everybody up, and so on the right side, if you're looking from behind the defense, you got number 48, Bud Dupree. You got number 77, Taylor Lewan. And then in the backfield, you got 22.
Yep.
And, handoff goes to Derrick Henry. It's like, okay, so Lewan's going to block Dupree, who's trying to tackle Derrick Henry. Now, it was walkthrough.
Sure.
Nothing. There was no contact, but, he's out there now. Caleb Farley is out there doing more and more. Got in an early period with team and was doing some stuff. And, again, he looks big. He looks fast. He looks good. Be really interesting to see if he does anything like in this Friday or any of these preseason games. But those two guys, Dupree and Farley, being where they are right now is huge news.
Yep.
And they haven't had any serious injuries. But, yeah, Vrabel is – especially with guys trying to make the team and stuff like that, availability is huge. Again, some guys got the day off. Now, Landry's a little bit banged up now, I believe, unless he just got a day off, but I thought he's missed 2 days now. Usually if someone misses a couple in a row, that means, okay, they've got something going on. Swaim has missed some time now. I think Simmons and Autry just got the day off again. Brown, too. They haven't had anything bad, but, yeah, you want people to be there. You want the offensive linemen to – Sombrilo is starting to get in the mix, but you got to try to figure that out. By the way, speaking of availability, I was waiting to see Jared on Saturday. Jared, that's 2 straight Saturdays. You're not out there. Is this White Claws and boating? What's going on? Because, of course.
White Claws and boating.
Let me know, Jared, on the text line.
Yes.
Last week, Jared's like, do you even watch practice? It's not going to be Kendall Lamb at right tackle. Let me promise you something. If they played a game today, Kendall Lamb is the starting right tackle.
Yes.
Jared's like, he doesn't think they like him or whatever. Like, okay, well, that may be true. I don't know what you're basing that on, but he's working at right tackle. They're trying other guys too. Now, could Sombrilo come in and challenge there if Radunz is not going to? Maybe.
Yeah.
Sombrilo's doing some drills now, pass pro drills, stuff like that, so he's getting closer. And then Radunz, he's getting the full cross-training thing. He's working inside, but I think that's one, it hasn't gone well so far for him, blocking pass rushers on the outside. And 2, again, as we talked about, the interior can use some depth help right now. Aaron Brewer is a guy, didn't necessarily have Aaron Brewer on my bingo card, like someone who's just got to be out there, but they need more bodies inside. So I think overall the big picture is very good health-wise. There's some spots where they're thin and trying to find people. And then there's some spots where I just don't know that the depth is that great right now, like outside linebacker. John Simon's fine.
Yeah.
Derek Roberson's out there again. Rashad Weaver, I think at times you can see the ability. But then, with Bud Dupree, like the other day, Landry is not out there and Dupree, is still limited. And it's like, boy, at other positions, like at corner, receiver, even inside linebacker, defensive line, you're seeing some of these depth guys rise up. I haven't really seen that there. And that's an important position.
Yeah, it's very important for the Titans as they move forward here. We'll continue to take your thoughts on our text line. All things Titans football available on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. We'll continue the discussion on the Titans when we come back and get into the management and coaching side of this a little bit. How much does John Robinson and Mike Vrabel have riding on this season? We'll get into that discussion coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 2 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic, intern Will here with you on this Monday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Going to have Corey Curtis from News 2 coming up at 8 o'clock for his weekly visit, so looking forward to that. Chase McCabe at 9:30. Taking your thoughts all show long on our text line as well, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. And Joe, we are a couple of weeks now into Titans training camp. Preseason officially beginning this week as the Titans travel to take on the Atlanta Falcons coming up on Friday. And before we know it, the regular season will be here, and what I would call maybe the most anticipated Titan season in a couple of decades taking place. Coming up here in just a few weeks with Arizona coming in week 1. We're off and running at that point. Obviously, John Robinson and Mike Vrabel have both, when you factor in the big picture, they've both done a very good job up until this point. John Robinson, and I think it's easy maybe sometimes to forget if you're a Titans fan, exactly what this team was when John Robinson took over. It was not good. It was a dumpster fire. It was one of the laughingstocks of the NFL, and pretty quickly that changed. I mean, they got to a point early on in John Robinson's tenure where they were competitive, they were winning games, they were competing for playoff spots, and now the challenge is, how do you go from getting into the playoffs to doing some damage in the playoffs? So let's start with the J-Rob part of this conversation. We'll get to Vrabel coming up here in just a few minutes. As you evaluate everything that's transpired over the course of the last year, you've won an AFC South. We know how bad the defense was a year ago. We've talked so much about it. Obviously, the moves that have been made this offseason with Adoree Jackson and Malcolm Butler and Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis all out the door. Julio Jones now in here. Obviously, Caleb Farley selected in the first round. All these different things that you factor in to the equation. How much does John Robinson have riding on this season, given the fact that, to me, going out and getting a guy like Julio Jones signals that you feel like your team is right there and right on the edge of being competitive and being able to compete for a Super Bowl? How much does J-Rob have riding on this team in the window that they're currently in with Tannehill and Henry playing the way they played the last couple of years?
Well, it's a huge year for him. When you talk about anyone in this league having stuff riding on it, I mean, it doesn't take long before people get to is, fill in the name, on the hot seat.
Right.
And that's not at all, to me, what we're talking about. But you know, this is sort of, I mean, it's 5 years in, and it's built up to this. As you said, it's the most anticipated team. I've been told, you know, maybe 2009, you could look at that going into that year, which ended up being a huge disappointment, by the way. So people probably don't want that to be brought up a lot. But,
probably not.
But after the 2008 division championship, 13-3 and all that stuff. But look, just in terms of how this team compares to the rest of the league and just the possibilities with some of the guys on this roster, I mean, I think you can make a case for 20 years-ish. And so that's all a credit to John Robinson. The stat that I have been keeping track of here for about a year, I mean, he's 47-33, he's 3-3 in the playoffs, so 3 teams have a better record and more playoffs wins while he's been here. The Chiefs, Pats, and Packers. Now, of course, they also have championships. The Chiefs have 1, the Patriots have 2. Well, sorry, the Packers don't have 1 yet. But
Thanks for that.
Yeah, sorry. And also, you're talking about like 60-20 for the Chiefs. I mean, they're not in that tier, but it is. I mean, it's kind of impressive that there's 3 teams, ahead of them, and when you look at it that way. But it's also, look, you're talking about Isaiah Wilson, first-round pick, and you're talking about Jadeveon Clowney and Vic Beasley last offseason. And now this offseason, I mean, the second-round pick right now, not going to, overreact, because certainly Dylan Radins could end up being a great player for 10 years in this league. I can't say anything I've seen says there's no way that happens.
Right.
But right now, he doesn't look ready to really compete at this level and be an asset on the field, and that's a second-round pick for a team in a window of winning. So you think about a first-round pick at right tackle last year, a second-round pick at right tackle this year, the investment in that position, man, like, you need to get some payoff for your second-round pick.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say that for any team any year, but I think especially when you go out and get Julio Jones and you're doing the things to, you're kicking the can down the road a little bit, you're trying to figure out a way to, to make that move right now. Man, the second round should yield you a player who makes you better. And right now, it doesn't look that way. And again, let's give Radin some weeks here and some time and see if that can change. I'm not far from giving up on him, but it doesn't look right now like he's going to be hugely impactful this year unless people get hurt ahead of him. So I think the what's riding on it for John Robinson is obviously the final outcome is the final outcome that's on his record, good or bad. But specifically with some of these acquisitions, you're taking some risks or you're maybe reaching a little bit. I mean, even Des Fitzpatrick right now, I don't see him contributing this year.
Yeah.
4th-round pick. Caleb Farley, now that is looking better right now. And there's a lot of, it's these big, the high draft picks that you spend and, of course, the money you spend. I mean, if Bud Dupree comes in and is great this year, well, okay. That looks better. I mean, that's being a GM in this league. I would say that it's really interesting that the overall picture is so good, and yet the specific to him, some of these moves recently kind of make it feel like there's more pressure on him than maybe there is.
Agreed. And look, I don't think that John Robinson is in any danger of losing his job. I mean, I think he's done a very good job largely up until this point. But it is interesting, like, where he's at right now with Titans fans. Like, we were talking about a first-round pick, and this goes back to the Julio Jones discussion. Like, would you be comfortable giving up a first-round pick? And there were some Titans fans like, well, I mean, yeah, J-Rob's going to screw up the first-round pick anyway, so you might as well just give up the first-round pick, which is not a way to operate in the NFL. We all know that. But it is interesting that the overall picture, the last couple of years especially, has largely been very good. But then there's so many individual moves along the way that if it goes the wrong way, like if Bud Dupree comes in this year and he's not effective and he is not worth anywhere near the $16-some-odd million per year that you're giving him, I mean, that's another bad look for John Robinson after Clowney and, all the stuff we went through last year and talking about the pass rush. Like, you can't say it's for lack of trying. I mean, he's trying. He's bringing in Clowney. He's bringing in Bud Dupree. He brought in Vic Beasley, much to, I think, maybe that one, the hesitancy immediately with a reaction on that one. But he's trying to address these things. But sometimes, I mean, tackle, obviously, he's trying to address that. It's just not working out so well right now for the Titans in that regard. So it's interesting to me, and part of the reason I brought this question up of the overall picture is still largely very good with this team. But there are some parts that up until this point, John Robinson hasn't really been able to figure out all that much. And once that starts to go the other way and starts to affect the bottom line, I don't think it's going to take very long for the opinion on him to shift with the Titans fan base. So it's a big year for him in that regard. Like, he needs Julio Jones to come in and work out. He needs Bud Dupree to come in and work out. He needs Caleb Farley to come in and be able to give them significant snaps as a first-round pick. It doesn't have to hit on everything. That's, I think, an impossible standard to hold a general manager to. But I do think that there is a high level of importance that should be placed on the big moves that John Robinson made this offseason. They've largely got to work out, because if they don't, you're just wasting a year of a window of Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry that you don't know how long that window is going to last.
Right. And again, Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, John Robinson acquisitions too.
Sure.
So, you always have to keep all that in mind as well. Like, the good things are also moves that he made. I would, but it could be better. Like you say, like they're good, and if just this or this or this were different, they could be better, right? I also think you have to look at the moves on what the information was at the time. I mean, some moves are going to work out great, some moves aren't. That's how it goes. But So I will always look at Clowney and Beasley differently. I can't blame him for trying with Clowney based on the information available. I can blame him for paying Vic Beasley $9.5 million when no one else appeared to want him, including the team that drafted him.
Right.
And the trend was so downward. Like, that to me is a bigger problem than Clowney, who even this year, after last year, was, everyone wants Clowney. I mean, that was, I think, a worthwhile gamble. I think Julio Jones, maybe he doesn't work out and he's hurt this year and doesn't do anything. I still say good, worthwhile gamble. I can't even, with Isaiah Wilson, the information that I understand was available at the time, it wasn't much. There wasn't much indication of the issues that he would have here. So even that one, that's a huge hole. But even that one, to me, it's a much bigger risk that you drafted Caleb Farley this year. I mean, we've seen some teams that have come out there and say the medical was terrible.
Yeah.
So when that happened, to me, at the time, information available, that is a bigger issue. Now, right now, it looks like that one may go his way. Who knows? And it looks good early. So it's what you knew at the time that I think has to be kept in mind with some of these moves. Bud Dupree, I think, is another one where, again, I would look at Clowney and say that I know people are going to laugh at this, but at the moment, I liked Clowney better than I liked Dupree this year with the huge deal coming off an ACL with a guy who is a good player. I think maybe a very good player, but has been part of a defense that kind of guys feed off each other and is like a great pass rusher on the other side in TJ Watt. But we'll see. That one's got to work out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're paying somebody that much money. That's got to be something that works. You start to get in the business of throwing all that money around and not getting a return on that investment. I mean, you're just going to be in a tough spot as a team. And look, and the salary cap, I realize, was the driving force behind this. But, I mean, you've basically overhauled your secondary, and you got a lot of young guys in there right now. You've got Jenkins, and I realize that he's a good player to have. Other than that, you got a lot of young guys in there. It's got to work. You've got to find a way to get those guys on the field and to get production out of them. Because, again, this window, and I know some people have thrown it out there, well, it's a 2-year window because you've got Julio Jones and Derrick Henry, and maybe it is. But my guess would be the best version the Titans are going to see of Julio Jones is probably this year. That's my guess. I could be wrong. But just based on age and the way people go, my guess is it's probably going to be this year. So to me, that's the window, is this year with Julio Jones and Derrick Henry. It's the NFL. I realize people can get hurt and things can change very quickly. But I don't think you can bank on, if you're a Titans fan, the next 3 to 4 years, this team just being right there in the thick of things in the AFC. Just based on the way the roster is set up and the age of some of these guys.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, it's certainly possible Julio Jones could be really good this year and next year. And
he could play well until he's 38 years old. I have no clue.
Yeah, and a few, maybe like a Radunz figures it out midseason this year, and then he's really good next year. I mean, we saw Nate Davis go through his rookie year, and eventually by the end he was really good. I mean, so maybe then, the 22 team could have everything. But, yeah, you have to look at it like this year. And you need to be right. Just from the Robinson perspective, you need to be right on your second-round pick from last year. You need to be right on your third-round pick from last year. Right now, that looks like that is easily by far the worst draft John Robinson's had. But the second and third-round picks, there's still a lot right on those guys, and they could make it look better, and that would definitely help this team. I mean, especially to me, Fulton, who I think has looked good in camp, but he needs to take a big step.
We'll continue the conversation on the Titans when we come back and switch gears to Mike Vrabel. How much does Mike Vrabel have riding on this season, and how much of that revolves around 2 moves in particular that he made this offseason? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Tune in to Nashville Sounds Baseball tomorrow as the Sounds begin a 6-game road trip against Louisville, the AAA affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds. Nashville Sounds Baseball on ESPN 94.9, presented by 312 Pizza Company and Farm Bureau Health Plans. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5. The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic, intern Will here with you on this Monday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing the Titans, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. We've discussed John Robinson and what he's got riding on this season with some big moves made over the offseason. Now switching the discussion to Mike Vrabel. And, Joe, I think in order to do that, you've got to go back to when Mike Vrabel was hired and the reasoning that he was brought in. Obviously, Mike Mularkey was here, and it's very rare to see a team fire a guy that gets to the playoffs and wins a playoff game for the first time in over a decade at that point in time that Mike Mularkey was here when they won against Kansas City. They move on from Mularkey. They bring in Mike Vrabel, and the thinking being there is a different level that this team has got to get to. The offense at the time with Mariota as the quarterback, a lot of discussion around Terry Robisky, his offensive coordinator. Vrabel comes in, the first year misses the playoffs. Second year finds his way to the AFC title game, and last year wins a division. So the early returns have been very good for Mike Vrabel so far. But he still was hired to bring this team more success in the postseason. So with all that in the backdrop, and then factoring in a couple of moves made this offseason as well, officially naming Shane Bowen the defensive coordinator and keeping things in-house, going with Todd Downing as offensive coordinator. Joe Rexrode, how much does Mike Vrabel have riding on this season, and how much of that kind of boils down to those two names that I just brought up in Todd Downing and Shane Bowen? Obviously, we've talked about those guys a lot. Vrabel, very comfortable with Shane Bowen, very comfortable staying in-house with Todd Downing as well. How much of how we view Mike Vrabel and the job he does this season is going to boil down to Shane Bowen and Todd Downing?
Yeah, probably a lot. I mean, again, with Vrabel, overall very good. And you're talking about, some postseason success. He had a couple wins in his second year, got to the title game, wins the division last year. So overall, been very good. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe he had the best start. He bested, or maybe he tied Jack Pardee for the best start for a coach after a certain number of games in franchise history. It's been very good. But the coordinator thing, I think, is definitely, that's what's amazing about last year is for all the success they had, that was such a dominant theme, how bad their D was, and then also – the fact that, there was no coordinator named, all that stuff. So, I think the coordinator choices are huge this year. He's very much a keep it in-house guy, which I think I understand the value to that, but I also think there's value in getting new ideas and bringing in high-performing coaches to be your coordinators.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chris texting in. What's crazier than firing Mularkey is hiring 3 coaches in a row named Mike. Now, I will say it wasn't 3 in a row. It was Mike Munchak, and then I know a lot of Titans fans want to forget about it.
Don't forget
but it
Ken.
was Ken Wisenhunt. Oh, Ken Wisenhunt in there, and then Mike Mularkey and Mike Vrabel. But, a lot of Mikes around here lately.
Yeah, but, you cannot forget Ken.
Even though I'm sure a lot of you would like to.
Ken W. Sounds like it was a wonderful display.
Oh, yeah, you missed out on that.
I
forgot about that.
just missed the whiz, unfortunately. But, with Vrabel, I mean, it's look, because Downing has been here, obviously, elevates him from tight end coach. And obviously the last time Vrabel did that worked out awfully well. Arthur Smith was tremendous. Todd Downing, now it's his opportunity with this stacked offense. One bad year as an OC in Oakland. And I take with a grain of salt people I know who, like if we get Fitz on here, probably, go off about Downing that year.
Yes.
The OC gets blamed for everything. I'm not saying that there's not, fair blame to be placed in a lot of situations I mean, it's a really tough job. It's a really important job. It does seem like that team had a lot of issues, and it all combined together, and maybe he wasn't ready for the opportunity. I don't know. But
namely, Derek Carr didn't look like the same guy. That was the year after he
Right.
basically the same injury Marcus Mariota did.
On the exact same day, yeah. Right, they both didn't look great the next year. One of them did win a playoff game, though, you might remember. His name was Marcus Mariota.
It was inspiring.
Yes. He caught his own touchdown pass. But
They got deflected by the defender. But, yeah.
yeah, that was a lucky play. He actually did make some big-time throws. I mean, he's throwing the winning TD pass to Eric Decker. So, give him some props.
That's true.
But
great job, Marcus.
Yes, there you go. See, you're coming around. I just like Bowen is a it's funny because Bowen, again, is just like, yes, having the title's awesome. Being the actual DC, it's huge. Seems to make a difference. But those choices are obviously a big part of this year. Those are incredibly important jobs. And so if those, either side struggles, I mean, then you look at, okay, why didn't you, look at like Terrell Austin is like a really accomplished DC, or, could you have gone out there and brought someone in with some fresh ideas for the offense? But so far, I mean, again, the big elevation he's made internally after the stunning hire by your favorite team of Matt LaFleur,
yes,
was definitely a case of no KYP, know your personnel.
Yeah.
Like, we're all like, Arthur Smith, can he call plays? Well, that was a good choice. Now we'll see if he's made two other good ones. I'm willing to give Bowen, the year of, okay, you're now the DC, now it's on you. Let's see.
And to Mike Vrabel's credit, I mean, it's not been perfect from a decision-making standpoint, but on the field, I feel like he's been pretty good in terms of in-game coaching decisions. And sometimes there's been a flat-out genius. Like him running Josh Kalu out there last year to get the intentional too many men on the field, which ended up saving the Titans about 45 seconds of clock time. I think in the Texans game, you come back and you tie that game up, then you win it in overtime. Like stuff like that. I mean, that's just genius level stuff that he's been able to pull off. Screwing with Belichick in the playoff game, I mean, that was awesome. It was unbelievable to watch. So, there have been some doozies now and then. I remember back a couple years ago while they were making that run to the AFC title game, some of the decisions on fourth down early in that year garnered a lot of criticism from Titans fans and Titans media alike. So it's not been perfect. No coach is going to be perfect in those decisions. But I do think largely on the field, Mike Vrabel's been pretty good in terms of his in-game decision-making.
Yeah, I mean, the 19 season kick, don't kick, or what, trick play here, double reverse.
Other than Brett
that will live in infamy. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was, I think, rightfully second guessed, but I agree with you. I mean, look, clock management is one of those things that all of us sitting there, chewing on a hot dog watching the game, we can't figure out any of this other stuff, personnel groupings or whatever, but we can all count and watch the clock. And there are so many coaches who suck at it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's inexcusable. And Vrabel, beyond what you're talking about, using some of the loopholes to his advantage, I think in terms of having a feel for, okay, you speed it up here. Oh, you want to be careful and not leave too much if you go 3 and out. Like all those, I think, for the most part, is excellent in that way. And that's underrated because there are some really good football coaches who cannot seem to understand math.
Oh, it's bad. Around the league. It's at times.
I don't want to rip on Les Miles any more than he's already been ripped on, but
Mike, come on.
He might be the king.
He might be. When we come back, we'll get into a little college football. Joe Rexrode taking in some Vanderbilt practice the other day. What stood out from Vandy's first couple of days of practice, and we'll continue to talk about Clark Lee, the challenges that he has heading into this year. Maybe a boisterous Clark Lee the other night as well. All that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Got the Rex Rant coming up at 7:45. Joe Rexrode's weekly rant takes place every Monday at 7:45. Corey Curtis at 8 o'clock to talk Titans, so looking forward to that conversation coming up at the beginning of next hour. Right now, talking Vanderbilt. Joe Rexrode, Vanderbilt opening up their practice for the fall. I believe last Friday night was their first practice on the field for the Commodores. You were there in attendance. A little bit of a later start for Clark Lee and company on Friday night under the lights over at Vanderbilt. What were some of your takeaways from the first practice that Clark Lee put together as head coach of Vanderbilt officially the other day with fall camp?
Yeah, and they're doing the night practice thing. So that's pretty much, as I look ahead here, the next at least week. Well, I guess Saturday they've got an earlier one, but during the week, at least for now, they are doing it at night. And it was it's all open, so they're opening up practice, which is great to be able to have a feel for what they're doing, and just see how it looks different. I mean, one difference that strikes you from Derek Mason to Clark Lee. Derek Mason practices. His voice was booming throughout the practice, and I mean, he got after it. D-Mace got after it.
Oh yeah.
It was interesting, and that's one thing I thought of. Like early on, Clark Lee is like addressing everyone, and he's just kind of like calmly, okay, we're gonna do this. All right, here we go. Then they do the drills and go through all their different things, team, and all the different situational things you do. And I was like, man, that's different. But at the end of the practice, obviously Clark Lee, and this is something that happens a lot in football. First day of practice, everybody's not sprinting from one station to the next.
Gotta set that tone.
There's some sloppiness, there's some lack of focus, whatever it is. Coach gets after his team, but Clark Lee got after him. I mean, it was. I was like, oh, okay. It's just one of those things, and this is. Certainly, I mean, I think probably the case, even with coaches we consider to be mild-mannered. At times, you're going to yell at your team, right?
Sure.
Yell at the player. But it was still a little bit like, wow. He got after it. And then, after the practice, I think I asked him something about, like, is that intensity that they've seen? And he's like, well, I'm intense every day. But intensity doesn't necessarily equal volume. This was intensity plus volume. So that was interesting to see.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, he's intense. It's just normally pretty even keel. But got after him. The quarterback stood out to me. The receiver stood out to me. I mean, I think that's the best part of this team easily. Ken Seals, Mike Wright. I think they both look really good out there. Mike Wright, to me, is a guy you want to be involved somehow. But Ken Seals, I don't see anything that makes me think he's going to lose his starting job either. He was, like in 7-on-7, he was really good. And they've got they've got some really good receivers. I mean, Cam Johnson, like Will Shepard, kind of like the star of the spring game, stood out to me again. The guy has speed, and he has an ability to accelerate quickly, to get to top speed quickly. So I like what I see there. Javion Marlowe is gone, so they're thin at running back when they're thin in a lot of places. And it's hard to know defensively what they're going to have this year, but they will, I think, entertain with the passing game this year. And it's going to be really interesting to me to see, does Mike Wright, does he have last year was a red zone guy. Does he have a Taysom Hill-ish kind of role? Do they use him at other positions? And can he really make a run at Ken Seals? I'm not counting that out right now. I don't see any reason to think Ken Seals isn't taking another step too.
Well, and it's interesting from a scheduling point of view. This is kind of an intriguing schedule for Vanderbilt, especially when you start looking at some of the out-of-conference games. You start with ETSU, and then on the road at Colorado State, at home against Stanford as well, and then UConn to close out the non-conference schedule. A couple of interesting games in there when you talk about Colorado State and Stanford. as far as the non-conference schedule is concerned, and then your crossover opponents are the two Mississippi schools in conference play this year. But from a scheduling standpoint, those are not easy games, those two non-conference schedules with Colorado State and Stanford. ETSU and UConn on a little bit of a different playing field, but Stanford and Colorado State, absolutely a challenge for Vanderbilt non-conference.
Yeah, I mean that's a possible 2-2 if you look at that. Now Colorado State's not good, but
No.
you're still going on the road. I mean that's. I just realized this now that you're saying this. That is a 9 o'clock start, huh?
Yeah,
Man.
buddy, come on.
10 Eastern time. Little that's like Pac-12
Pac-12 after dark, baby.
stuff
Come on.
for the doors. Yeah. So that and that is that, guys. What is that? Is that the night before the Titans opener? It is. So stay up late, watch little Vanderbilt football, and wake up.
Rondale Moore coming
that's
in
right.
there
Wake,
next
wake
day.
up to Rondale Moore. But Stanford's not great either. I mean, Stanford is getting worse as a program, but that's still a tough team coming into your building. So yeah, there are definitely easier Vanderbilt non-league schedules that have existed than this one, and the league schedule, as you said, it could be worse.
Yeah,
the fact that you've got the Mississippis from the West, I mean, it could be way worse. You don't have to deal with LSU. You don't have to deal with A&M. You don't have to deal with Bama, Auburn. I mean, so from that perspective,
the crazy pirate coming in here.
that's right. A coach who should East opponent. You know you're going to play them. But, I mean, you go through this schedule, I mean, it's not totally out of the realm of possibility for Vanderbilt to find 6 wins. You probably have to win all 4, or at least go 3-1 in the non-league. You got to probably win at Tennessee.
Yep.
But could you beat Mississippi State? Could you beat South Carolina?
Those are the two winnable games, I think, on the schedule. I mean, Tennessee thrown in there as well.
Yeah.
But those are the winnable games, SEC-wise, I think, for Vanderbilt. I mean, you could look at Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss's offense is just going to be too much.
And I just think back to last year when they played Ole Miss, and I know that
Elijah Moore had 400 yards.
I know he's not there anymore, but my gosh. Talk about
that was something.
An eviscerating of a defense. And he was incredible. And apparently he still looks that way in Jets camp, by the way. So, but yeah, I can't get with that one at Ole Miss. I can't buy that one. I can buy it Tennessee. It's both of these teams in this state. A lot of questions, a lot of things that could break their way, but also could go the other way. And then, at that point in the year, as always with those two teams, how many key injuries does one side have that maybe the other side doesn't have?
Real quickly, as we wrap up this segment here, I do think it's appropriate to mention the passing of Bobby Bowden yesterday at the age of 91 years old. Obviously, a fantastic coach at Florida State. Probably an even better human being. I got the honor of watching Bobby Bowden one time come to a local church in Hendersonville and just speak, and just the priorities he had in life and how much he loved his family, how much he loved his players on the field. I mean, it was palpable when he was talking. So, obviously I wasn't a Florida State fan and didn't watch. It wasn't like I was watching every Florida State game every week while he was there, but a legend in the college football coaching world, and a guy that lived a great life in Bobby Bowden, 91 years old. Tough to see him passing over the weekend.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of those people who have a certain public persona, and by all accounts, it's exactly who he was.
Yep.
So you got to really appreciate that. And we had Steve Spurrier on last week, and it's funny because and we love Steve Spurrier, he's great, but at that time when they were going head-to-head, I feel like most of America loved Bobby Bowden, and that's the nice guy you want to win, and then that trash talker over on the other side.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's rest in peace, Bobby Bowden, and he's one of those guys who just universally seems to be loved in the college football world.
When we come back, time for the Rex Rant. Joe Rexrode's weekly rant coming your way up next. Taking your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game.